Hey everybody. On my last video, I asked what you wanted to talk about and got some feedback, and that was about chord transitions, moving from one chord to another. So while it's not the most common thing on bass, it's gaining in popularity and it's just fun to do. So let's talk about chord transitions. What I like to do is when I'm putting something together and I'm looking at what my chords are, I just like to rehearse the transition parts themselves. I don't focus on the composition, what the song sounds like, what the feeling is behind it, how I'm like pretty much I take out whatever I'm doing with my right hand. I'm not worried about how I'm strumming it. I'm not worried about playing in time. Just worried about getting from one chord to another and getting those chord shapes under my fingers, getting muscle memory built up. So, take an example. I have a piece that I will play for you that consists of a handful of fairly simple chords. So we have like a C minor type of voicing, an A major. This is just like an A5 and a D major. So chords are very simple. I like the way they sound. Getting from one to the next is my primary focus. So when I'm rehearsing this, again, I'm not thinking about how it sounds, how I'm playing it. Just how do I get from here to here? What makes the most sense? And then also thinking when I go from the first chord to the second chord, where do I need to be to set myself up for the third chord? So I want to make that transition from the first chord to the second chord, but I also have to be aware of that third chord that's coming up. Once I get to the second chord, I want to set myself up for the third chord, but I'm also thinking about right when I land on that third chord, am I setting myself up for the fourth chord? So trying to always think a step ahead. And it takes a little while to figure out. I might mess around with some different fingerings to figure out what works the best coming out of one particular chord into the next chord and setting myself up for the chord that follows. So for this piece, going from the first chord, that C sharp minor, to the A, typically I'll play that with first and second finger. It's just a root note and major third. So the root is played with my second finger, major third played with my first finger. Very comfortable, easy to play. Now when I go into the third chord, which is just like an inverted fifth, I have the root on the G string and the 5 is on the D string. It's actually easier to play with one finger than it is with two fingers. I'm trying to cram those two fingers in, and especially where I'm coming from, I can do it, but it's not comfortable. So what I try to do is, again, I'm setting myself up for that chord. So if I play this A, if I actually bar these two notes on the G and the D, and then I play my root note with my second finger, my first finger is still barring both of those strings. And the reason that I'm doing it is because it's setting myself up for the next chord. So I have to do as little movement as possible to get that voicing out. So if I had to do this transition, I know down the road when I piece this all together, I want it to sound real legato, real smooth, not a lot of rest in between chords. So it's going to force me into getting some sort of pause in between those two chords, which I don't want. Again, if I bar here with that root note, I can slide down, giving me even more of a legato sound, which is exactly what I'm going for. So I'm thinking about that stuff, but only to the point where I'm just looking at my technique. So I know what I want it to sound like. I'm not worried about making it sound like that. I'm just worried about the technical aspect of getting that, so then the feel can come later after I get that technical piece of it down. So I'll rehearse. Now this is just the first four chords of a whole composition, but I like to break stuff down to really short pieces to work on. So I might take just the transition between the first and the second chord. Thinking about how I want to set that up, trying different things. For this particular piece, I found, again, I wanted to sound real legato. Coming from here to here, there was that forced space as my hand transitions up a few frets. So what I did is I just happened to be in the right key, and where I was going to was an A major sound, so I just utilized the open A string. So that gave me the kind of covered up the space in between there. So again, it was another technical thing where I didn't think about the time. I didn't think about exactly how the feel was going to be. I just think of it technically. I was going to play this chord, I was going to play the open string, and in that time where the open string is ringing, I got however long it needs to take me to get up there, and that open A ringing gives me that legato sound. So I would just practice those first two chords. And I'd play it at whatever tempo felt comfortable, but especially whatever tempo I could do it and not make mistakes. That was my primary concern. What I don't want to do is rehearse mistakes. If I find I'm trying to play to a metronome setting and maybe I'm almost there but not quite, and I just keep repeating that, I'm repeating the mistake. I'm repeating the sloppiness. I don't want to do that. So I'm not thinking about tempo. I'm not using a metronome. I'm just trying to play those chords. And just cycling through those chords. But again, if all four of those chords are too much, and maybe I'm not consistently being clean with all of them, I'll go back and focus on just two of those chords of the whole pattern. So if I'm just struggling with those first two, I will focus on that. Between the second and the third chord, or the third and the fourth chord, wherever I'm having a little bit of problem, that's where I'm going to focus. So don't worry about timing. Don't worry about exactly what your right hand's going to do or your plucking hand's going to do. Just go through and get the chord shapes under your fingers. As you play, look down, sight out where your fingers are going to land, what fingers, what string, what fret. See that happening on the neck ahead of time. Once you do that, it's a lot easier to hit your target. You're thinking about one step ahead of what you're playing. You have the shape down, you have the muscle memory down. That's the thing that's going to be key. Once you get the muscle memory down, now it's time to introduce the metronome. So with the metronome, you can set the tempo again to where it's comfortable to play and you play it cleanly, whatever that happens to be. Thank you so much for watching the video, and hope to hear from you everybody soon. Thanks.